And I have not been present in the discussions about the survey, so I'm gonna let y'all lead.
I don't, Marilee, you, were you gonna lead this or did you want me to lead this?
Um, I do have to leave at 2:30 to deal with a student thing. Um,
Okay.
but I was kind of, I was thinking you would lead it since you'd done the last set of revisions to the
Okay.
survey.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wasn't sure because I thought you had originally mentioned something about incorporating research questions, but that's totally fine. Happy to do it. Just didn't want
Yeah,
to.
no, I did, and I didn't get that done.
That's okay. No worries. It was discussed in passing. All right. I will put in the chat, I guess, the final at this point version of the survey if you all want to either refer back to it or you don't like the way that I go through it. You have some control, but I'll record my screen or share my screen. All right, so I don't know, I guess maybe I'll just hit some of the points that were discussed, and how we change them and open the opportunity if anyone has any better revisions, because I'm not sure necessarily we made the best iteration possible. This is the front page, of course. I did try to bold some of the key parts because this is a lot of text to read. And we'll come back to this, but participation takes approximately 30 minutes. We cut a lot of content, so we are more confident that it takes 30 minutes now. We also added this part that I put in bold here, because we had a lot of discussion of who's taking this survey. Can it be a kid in the house? Can it be a neighbor who just happens to be home? And so now we say you must live in this house and be a head of household. We do not have a survey question. Like another iteration of this could be the first question that gets asked is, do you live in this house? And are you a head of household? And if you answer no to either one of those, it just auto takes you to the end of the survey and you can't even fill it out. I honestly found jot form a little confusing and I didn't understand how to make logic in survey questions, so that's why I didn't add it. But open to if you think this is sufficient enough, or we should in fact add those questions.
I think it might be a good one just from covering our basis standpoint in terms of having them explicitly say yes. If you need help with the conditional logic, I'm happy to help you with that. I agree it is not overly intuitive the first time.
Same. But if we have them fill those two questions out, does that mean, do we still pay them? Because as a participant going through and saying submit and going through even just two questions and be like, I filled it out. It's like, I just want to make sure we're clear that if it goes all the way to the bottom right away, we're telling them they're ineligible.
I mean, on a typical survey of a kind like this, they would not be paid because they would be kicked out early on and it would just be like, thank you. On this one, it is a really good question. I think that, yeah.
Just to consider,
Yeah.
we don't have to
No,
decide
I
now.
mean, like, we do need to make it clear. I would say no, that, I mean, in an ideal world, I'd say no, they don't get the $10 because they haven't taken the survey, because they don't qualify. If we have a way that it can be that when they first, like Christian, if we can put it in such that it knocks them out early on, so they don't have the opportunity, and then it's like the part about getting paid is like, I don't know, somewhere else or something. I think that makes it cleaner, in the scheme of things.
What I think you could do is have something on that first one that's like, I certify that I am, that I
Yeah.
live here and I am the head of household, and unless that button is checked, the next button doesn't show up, right? So they didn't actually ever start the survey. They didn't get past the intro page. So we could hide the next button. Unless the certify, however you want to phrase that, that they have opted in more or less to start the process.
Yeah,
We
I
have
mean,
that for one of ours that we ask them questions like, before we waste your time, are you eligible for this study? And they only are then go through the informed consent and get paid if they've self-certified that they are eligible for what we're asking for.
I think that sounds like a good way. And then like that, before we waste your time, I mean, kind of like we're thinking of you. That approach I think is a good one. The surveys I've done like this where they do get paid later on is they've always been like through Qualtrics, and so they're it's a different way that they get paid. And so they don't even see, we don't even mention in the cover letter or in this intro kind of letter, it doesn't say, it just says they answer some questions about being qualified or not. And if they're not, they get kicked out. They don't get paid by their company that is part of the Qualtrics panel kind of a thing. But I think your approach, and I think Erica, I think I saw your head nodding. That sounded like maybe a good approach to take that would, I think, Kristen, answer your concern, which is a very good concern.
Okay, so let's note that as something to deal with. Since Marilee is going to have to leave pretty soon, why don't we get on to some of the other issues?
Sounds good. I wrote that down. Okay. Let's see here. I don't think any of this changed. This is just demographics questions. These are pretty standard from census data. I did move this one. I don't think that really is a contentious point, but it didn't make sense where it was before. And this one again is nothing changed here. It's pretty standard stuff about where you work or in the like what we call the pilot that Will helped run, no one seemed to have issues with this one, so I didn't change this at all, except for specified how long they had to be living in the house. So this one changed here a little bit.
I ask one quick question or one note, maybe for us to go back to. You asked how, like, please include who have been living in the house for 1 to 6 months. I don't think there's been a question yet about how long that person filling out the survey has been in the house. That might be a worthwhile question.
Yeah, I see your point. I mean, I just assume like if you're living in the house and you're a decision maker for the house.
But my decisions are probably drastically different if I've lived in the house for a month versus 10 years in terms of how I view some of my choices. Anyway, not to go too many details, but just a thought that comes to mind.
Yeah, no, I get that point. I think this is more like what if they have a relative that's been staying with them for 4 weeks or right? Like where do we cut that off? I think that's what Will was getting questions about. But I definitely see your point about that other point.
We could look at that in kind of in reference to the research questions we're thinking about as to whether time in home how that would affect some of the questions. So I think it's a good point to consider and see if we do need to add that. I kind of think maybe it's not as key, but it's good to think about that before we send the survey out again.
I don't know, just I guess really quickly. This one was a bit confusing before, so we just tried to clean up that language. If you had a choice about a thermostat design, and we're trying to echo what our system design could be with a real life device that they might understand better than our arbitrary device they've probably never had experience with.
Are these comfortable for people? Are these descriptions, do we know if they're comfortable for people, like adjusting temperature? Is that something people are used to thinking about? Like, what if you had a constant temperature thermostat? Would you know what the other ones were?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to provide the example But if that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It just seems a lot. But anyway, I don't think that's the most important thing. We can go on.
All right. Don't think we significantly altered anything here except that before we had like, why do you change your filter in your furnace, and why do you change your lint trap? And one of the options was to avoid a fire, and people were like, wait, if I don't do it, I'm gonna catch my house on fire and freak people out. So we just said for safety reasons. Oh, I don't know, is that less jarring? Is that less harsh?
Well, I think this was when you said that it had raised a concern, or people hadn't thought about that their dryer, for example, could, or something could catch on fire. If we do say for safety reasons, is that does that solve the problem, or just not help much, or what do you think?
Oh, were you asking me, Marilyn?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was asking Will.
Will.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Will.
Oh, sorry. No, I think for safety reasons I think that's good than just saying like, so I don't catch a fire, because I think safety reasons kind of encompasses the whole thing about that. Although I thought it was helpful that I informed people, was like, yes, changing your filter can prevent these things. Because I think some people are like, I just change it when my clothes are still wet. Like, that might not change it all the time. So
Okay, well, it sounds like
I think
this
some
would be,
people was like, it was a performance factor more or less than a safety factor for them to change it.
gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Perfect. So we're not scaring people, so that's good.
Erica, I'm not seeing this. Oh, maybe I am. I thought I was seeing a different survey. Oh, I see. It's conditional logic there. So it
Yes.
only asked about the ones that you have.
Also,
Okay.
we did add here, which was one question I think you had about, it now says your appliances that work, so that we're specifying that piece of it for them.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, let's see here. Nothing changed there. All right, we changed a handful of these Likert scales. People were confused by the Likert scales, so now we said, instead of like strongly disagree to strongly agree, now it's like, this sounds a lot like me, this sounds somewhat like me, this does not sound like me, and this doesn't sound like me at all. Not sure what our thoughts there, if that's a better approach. There was a lot of brainstorming involved with here.
I like that better than the strongly agree, disagree.
I think it
approach.
is better. I would have a hard time choosing between does not and does not sound at all. That I don't think your wording is bad. I just wouldn't know which one to pick.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you talked about that a lot.
We did a little, and also on something like this, sometimes you'll turn it into like, almost like, you combine the categories when you're analyzing it, so that if you don't, doesn't sound like me and doesn't sound at all like me, sometimes will be for the analysis clumped together, versus the ones where it's like, it sounds a little like me, or it sounds a lot like me. So but it is hard sometimes to make that the distinction.
Mm-hmm.
People don't like to use the edges of a scale anyway too much.
Mm.
What about
Yeah.
saying this does not sound much like me?
Then it's hard to distinguish between somewhat like and not much. Like, I know this isn't what you want, but I would make the last one. This sounds like a totally different person. But I don't think that that would be effective.
This sounds like my spouse.
Okay, let's go on. I think we recognize the ambiguity, but you guys probably talked about that a lot.
Yeah, and y'all have the link, so if wording comes to you in the middle of the night, please send me an email. Happy to modify that. All right. We changed the wording in this section quite a bit just because I don't know, for a variety of reasons. I don't think this anything necessarily needs to be discussed. We did keep this Likert scale. I didn't really know how to change that one. Seemed like there was less pushback on that one from the participants. We could change satisfied to happy versus not happy, I guess. But open to that. This one we changed quite a bit here. So this used to be select, like it was a obscure matrix, and it was like select the 3 that are the topmost concerns, and there was a lot more options, so we scaled down the list and just made it pick 3, and that's a much simpler way to do that one. I think it's fairly straightforward.
Do we want to put an other just in case
Mhm.
there's something that they're really worried about that, and they're like, oh, these people are stupid. They don't understand what the issues are.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and maybe Christian, if you have more experience with Jotform, I struggled with this for a long time. I cannot get the other to provide like and now fill in like a text entry of what your other represents. So I got rid of other because I thought that wasn't very helpful.
So when you
Yeah, I
when
can
you
help
do
with
it,
that.
it'll populate the other box.
Okay. Okay. I did not see that, but I didn't look at it maybe in the final form, so I'll retry that. Okay, good feedback there. We had this one just in an obscure place before, so now it is moved up here. I'm not sure if there's anything. I don't know, maybe Paul is the same representative of potential options people would choose why they're in the weatherization program.
Yeah, so actually I think um
Are there situations when this is like pitched to people, Paul? Like they just happen to be advertised to that it's available to them?
actually the single biggest reason people choose to participate in the weatherization program is because they were referred by another program. Um, and one of the most common recruitment sources is LIHEAP, the Low Income Heating Energy Assistance Program. And so that's where the government is just paying the bills. And so pretty much everybody who enrolls in LIHEAP gets asked, are you interested in participating in the weatherization program? And of course, the government's interested in that because if the government's paying their bills anyway, then if they make the home more efficient, then now the government's paying less. And so weatherization can take actually like 15% of LIHEAP money to do weatherization work at each state. So that referral is a really, it probably is the single biggest reason people participate. They're not even really thinking about a lot of these other things.
So if they aren't saving money, right? Like if they're saving the government money, don't we still want to know why they did it? Because they still have to be at home. They still have to contact somebody.
Yeah, but the reason they chose to participate in the program was because they got referred to it by LIHEAP. Now,
Do they have to? If LIHEAP refers them, do they need?
no, they don't
So,
have to participate, but they might be like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Um, they may not actually get to the point of having any of these motivations. It's like, okay, you're helping me out with this, and now you say you want to help me out with something else. Sure.
okay.
So it's like
Could it be-
ambivalence. Is there
could it
any
be in-
case where it wasn't their choice? Like if you're a renter, could it be that the homeowner is the one who actually made the choice to do the weatherization?
Yeah, but that's not going to be very common. There are a lot of agencies just avoid rentals because of the hassle of having both residents and owners who are separate. When they do it, a lot of times it's in multifamily settings, and it gets weird. It does happen, but that would be a very unusual one, and I think other would be good enough for that rare case.
So I might suggest two things, just to add. One, because I was referred, and two, I didn't make this choice. I think that would be useful feedback.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and if we wanted to get at like, maybe like, what is the main benefit you hope to get? If we had a different question, a slightly different question, like if, you've talked about, Paul, about like people want to do it because they think they're gonna improve how their house looks, they're gonna get new windows versus something, and I think you've mentioned also they think about comfort. That we could, now I'm adding to the survey, but there's the potential if which would be useful, which I think it might be like, what do you think you're gonna get from this? Like, what's the big thing you want to get? Or something like that, which I would argue would get a little bit of motivation and separate it from like, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I was referred, but like, what is your hope or what, or something like that? Do you think that that would be something they would have thought about or
Yes.
could articulate?
Yes, that I really like that question a lot. And I might actually say, if we don't want to add to the survey, I might suggest replacing this question with that question, and then don't add the referral because that's not what they're trying to get out of it. But yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, they might not have thought about it. They might not have chosen to participate for any of those reasons. But now that they're coming, when do I get my new windows? When is that
Yeah.
back room not going to be cold anymore?
I think that's probably, and Erica and Pi, please correct me if I'm wrong here. I think that when we were thinking of like reason, that might have been more like that is your motivation, or that idea. And so if we revise this one in the way we're talking about now, I think we would get a piece of data that's much more useful to us. And since now we understand more like how they come to the program. That they have been referred, and that's not really their reason. I mean, that's not the reason that what they're hoping for next. So I would vote for revising the question and not adding another question.
Okay, I think that serves the purpose of this, so we'll change that. Perfect, that was good feedback. All right, we changed this one slightly. Well, fair, probably maybe the most in this section. So we try to tell them what the air quality is, briefly without trying to be biased. So we just said air quality describes how polluted the air we breathe is. We also contemplated adding that clean air is good for your health and bad air is bad for your health, but to avoid scaring people, we didn't include that sentence.
And I think we're not testing perceptions of air pollution. I think that's probably better done in another format. I would say maybe air quality describes how clean or polluted the air we breathe is,
Okay.
but that's a small point.
Got it. Okay, so we kept this one and then kept this and got rid of a bunch of questions that were confusing in this section and narrowed it down.
We got rid of all the ones that had the, like, showed them what the AQI dial looks like, all of that kind of stuff to simplify this. I think this will give us some interesting information, this part.
Yeah. And yeah, and this one, I think we modified it slightly, but like, again, perceptions of what they think improves their air quality in their home, whether or not it actually does or does not, we thought would be an interesting result.
Erica, real quick, on that one, if they don't mark anything, do they get to advance, or do we need to have a like, I don't do any of these things? as an option. I don't know if any of these are forced choice or not, or forced answer.
Yeah, we currently have no forced responses throughout the entire survey, but we could add a I don't do any of these to specify people that truly don't do versus just skip to that question.
I think that's a good idea.
And I'm sorry, I've got to solve hopefully a student problem, but thanks, and I'm sorry I can't stay longer. I'll see you guys next week.
Sounds good.
Um,
All right. The good news is in this last section, so this is in fact the last section. I don't think we changed very many things, right? Just do you smoke indoors? Does anyone in your household smoke indoors? Asked if they have a primary physician, and the point of these is to get at like personal maintenance behaviors. We did add this option like, well, what happens if I go to the doctor all the time because I have cancer and I'm in treatment or something like that. So we added that. And then asked if anyone in their house has any sort of chronic diseases that might make them susceptible to poor air quality. And like a construct of how much control they think they have over their health. Before, we also had another section after this about maintenance behavior with vehicles, because we thought that was another area where we could capture willingness to maintain something, but we decided to get rid of that because we kind of asked questions to death about maintenance behavior, so we didn't think that was necessary anymore.
So Erica, on the question about smoking.
Yep.
Do we include vaping? Do we make it clear whether vaping is included or cannabis?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Why are these questions here? What are we trying to get at with these questions?
Yep, that's a good question. So I'm trying to think back on this section here. So these specific ones, I think the smoke, right, that gets at your exposure, right, to poor air quality, I'm guessing. Is it not a good question?
Well, I just don't, because I think a lot of some of the health questions were about whether they do maintenance in other areas of their lives. And this one, I'm not sure what it's touching on. I don't think it's a terrible question. I'm just not, I can't remember what it was connected to in terms of what we are, in terms of what we're seeking.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to group people into like who are worried about their indoor air quality and people that are not worried about their indoor air quality, and people that are like trying to actively seek improvements versus not seek improvements versus like seek improvements while also undermining the improvements that they're doing. I think it's the intent there.
In terms of, I wonder if people get defensive about the smoking one, right? I think people don't always answer that truthfully, especially with the cannabis versus tobacco versus whatever. I wonder if we could get to the same type of question, making it a little more broad in terms of, are there regular activities inside your home that involve the generation of smoke, right? That's not a good way to phrase it, and then give examples. Smoking, incense burners, like, because I think it's interesting to know, are they burning things inside their home? But I think people can get quite defensive and not necessarily answer truthfully because of the smoking's potential stigma.
I was thinking the same thing about the going to the doctor and teeth brushing. I think most people know that they should do that and they might be defensive about it as well. And so I don't know if we need to ask those questions differently. It could be just something as simple as saying, we understand these are very personal decisions. We're just interested in how often people make time to do this, or I don't know if that's too leading or what.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't give you a great answer, just, yeah, I think all of these, what we're really looking for is how often they engage in health behaviors that take them outside of their normal daily activities.
Okay.
Except maybe for the smoking. Isn't that right? I mean, I'm projecting from long ago conversations here, so please feel free to correct me.
Yeah, no, I guess that is true. It's like maintenance behaviors more than habitual behaviors, right? You brush your teeth just because it's a habit. You don't really think about it. So that's not necessarily something that would be analogous to changing out a filter in your, air quality device.
So I don't have a suggestion for a change other than to remind us there's a bunch of interesting things we could talk about that connect to air quality. And what we're really trying to get at is how much attention people pay to change, and how, like, if something's important to them, how willing are they to take those actions.
No, that's good. I like that. I'll
I
perhaps
suggest
include-
if we're gonna keep the smoking questions, and I'm getting a better understanding of why they're there, I think we should get rid of the first one. Because you
Mm.
would be included in your household. You implicates a person. If you are the one in your household that smokes, you can say yes without implicating yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess, yeah, I did want to go back to that one with Christian's comment about like, are all sources of smoke the same? So we also originally had discussed including a question if you have a wood burning stove in your house, because that can be a source. I think we ended up removing that, so this could be an opportunity to ask that as well, like rolled up in that. I don't know if, someone that smokes tobacco inside their house is as bad as a wood-fired stove. That's not my area. I'm not sure.
It'd have to be a very, very smoky stove to beat out a cigarette. But,
Yeah,
I think
I'd
I'd
be,
leave it,
Okay.
I think I'd leave it as smoke any, or, so I'm gonna betray my ignorance here. If you vape, is there secondhand vape as in addition to secondhand smoking? I have never vaped. Like, so I think the question here is smoke released to your indoors through personal activities? And so we could say, does anyone in your household smoke any substances or vape indoors? But I don't know if vaping qualifies. I don't know how it works.
Can look that up. So if that's the case, we would want to include vape, cannabis, and tobacco.
Just say any substances.
Okay.
It, like, I don't want to try, like, if you list a whole bunch of things, then there could always be an exception. I think the general question here is smoke released indoors, right? So we can just say smoke any substances, so people don't have to go, do you mean tobacco? Do you mean pot? Just, I think people will know if they're covered.
Okay. And then, I mean, Christian, you did also mention burning incense. I think you said that. Like, do we think there's value in adding a question that's those other sources? It's not smoking the products, drugs?
so my rationale for that is, and there is no scientific knowledge for this at all, but like if it's a household that's used to having smoky type things in their home, which could be, you know, personal products or candles, incense, whatever, that they're maybe less, they would notice it less when it's smoke from some other source, but I have absolutely no basis for that. I would be very interested to know that in the houses that we're going into, but I know that's a separate
Hmm.
thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thanks, Will, for your comments. I guess I'm feeling like tending away from it just because then we'd have to go not just incense, but candles and scents, and there's a bunch of things that people can release to their indoors that they might see as positive that are actually negative, and that might just be too much of a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm seeing in the chat, Danny asks whether equipment will pick up other sources of PM. I would think that it would pick up sources of PM like stuff from scented candles. Air fresheners do not necessarily emit PM. They'll emit VOCs. And if there are cleaning products being used at the same time, they may result in chemical reactions that produce PM, but it wouldn't be PM from the scented products necessarily directly.
So I think again, returning to the purpose of the survey. The main purpose is, what do people do about indoor air? I think for the houses that we go into, we may want to be pickier. And will the Omnis have VOCs? Yeah. So we get maybe
Yes,
from
they
air
do.
fresheners.
Yes, that's, yeah,
But
right.
I want to be careful with this survey is not meant to characterize sources of indoor air pollution. That if it would be designed a lot differently if it was.
Okay. That's all helpful. Appreciate everyone's feedback. I think that's all we had. And then the last question is just, where can we send your gift card?
So I think that's great. One that comes to mind just because we got burned recently, not to double dip on all the burning terms, but on one of the other surveys is because there was nothing to stop people from going through, and we had like quickly, we had no clauses in there that they had to complete such and such a percentage. We did have some people who just clicked through and took their cash and went. So I don't know how best to do that, if it's you must respond to all questions, or, you know, to Marilee's point of a non-response, they still have to respond to it, not applicable, that sort of thing. And maybe it's an overly paranoid piece, but just a thought. Because we had no recourse, because they went through the whole thing.
So are you saying there should be like something that prevents them, like they can't go to the next page unless they click like something, so they can't just go next.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's kind of two pieces. So yes, right, if they just done next, they would have got to the end and technically had finished the whole survey. So that's one piece of it. The other one is, we've had some studies where it was problematic to separate out a non-response and a missed question. So we've gone to ours that everything has to be responded to, even if it's a, you know, not applicable or none of the above or what have you. But then we knew they at least responded to the question. It adds more burden to people, right? But it saved us some headaches down the line in analysis.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I handle that a couple different ways. I usually do paid survey panels, and so I just get rid of anyone that takes, like, I think it's, a quarter of the median response time, and then that's a good rationale to pay people, because I usually pay them afterwards through the source, but that's not a mechanism we could do for this. Also, some quality control. So you ask the same question on the first page and on the last page, and you make sure that they answered it the same. And then you know that it's like a genuine response. That doesn't necessarily get at, do we pay someone if whether or not, right? We should still compensate them for their time, but if they just like click through, probably shouldn't. But no, that's a good point. I will make it so that every one has to be responded to, I guess. But then, I mean, some of the questions ask, personal questions. So then we're forcing a response, which I think we wanted to avoid.
But you could put I'm choosing not to respond, or
Yeah.
prefer not to respond.
Okay, I'll incorporate that. That's good feedback.
And we
One
could
other
say,
thing, oh, go ahead, Tammy.
we could say something in the introduction, like you'll receive $10 gift card if you complete all the questions in the survey or something.
One thing I saw was that we use house and home both, and I think we need to be consistent. So, because I know a lot of them don't consider what they live in as a actual house, a brick and mortar. So, changing all the houses to homes.
Okay, yep, thanks. That's a good catch.
I like that.
I think that's all that I had. And then if anyone else had anything about the survey, otherwise, I think there was another task item about the pilot.
One
Yeah.
thing, did you guys
Go ahead.
figure out how to get their name? Because I can't like address anybody currently when I send gift cards out, but I know we can't have names associated to like the data.
I'm not sure if I knew that was a problem. So what's the problem? So why do we need the names?
Well, when I send the gift card out, I have to put a name on an address. I currently I'm just putting current owner.
Okay, gotcha. I don't know
I
how to
think-
do it in Qualtrics, but I don't know how to do it in Jotform, but I can figure it out. There's usually a feature where it isolates one question from the responses and
Okay.
it stores it separately. I can see if that's a functionality.
Yeah, and maybe this has changed. Everyone in the past that we've used is every other CSU study in the past, we've used gift cards. Or we had to keep track of who that gift card was given to and provide it to the CSU financial office for taxes, like as a statement of where the money went. So we had to collect it.
Yeah, I just recently wrapped up a study where I was like, the whole purpose of the study is to have anonymous data. And they're like, okay, just put subject number 1, 2, 3, 4. And they did not push back at all. And it was funded by the DOE. So
And we have not had to do it for the gift cards that we give to the Epic Homes.
that's the
fantastic.
question. You
Set
you
something
push
up.
back and they'll give in.
I had to do a 2-hour training on like ethical dispersion of cash when it wasn't like a monetary piece, so that it wasn't like ripping off the US taxpayers by giving out gift cards.
EBO gave us a form. There was like one for their names and one for people who are anonymous participants. And we had to fill out the anonymous one.
Well, okay, we'll let you know what happens when we try to get reimbursed. So there is another question. Kristen has worked very hard to try to find people who would be willing to take the survey and pilot it. Just simply take it, sit there, we'll pay you, tell us what's wrong with it, tell us what you're confused about. And we've had a hard time with that. And so ideas are welcome. Kristen, I don't know if you want to say anything about all the things you've tried.
I mean, not more than just the emails that I sent, but I've sent them to quite a few places and responded. I mean, one person responded saying they can't communicate with their people without being a part of that organization, which is like the Fort Collins Senior Center, I think. But it's just nobody's responding because they're cold emails. So it's not like I'm going up and walking up to their front door, which I may have to start doing that. but
Do we just need a group of people who are willing to take it? Like, we just want for people to take it? So we worked with La Familia in Fort Collins for the
I
CDPHE project.
reached out
You
to
did?
them. But if you have a personal contact, that may help.
Yeah. So we have that, and we kind of, that was a site where we had to have more FaceTime than initially planned for that. So I mean, I can try reaching out to them, to the person that we work with, our point of contact, and seeing if they be willing to work with us on that.
That would
Sure.
be great, yeah. And we just want to hear from people, but what we don't want to do is have another educated group of people saying our survey is fine when it's not fine.
So what kind of people are we looking for and how many?
About 5 or 6, and then ideally maybe high school educated or lower, 8th grade reading level probably.
Okay, so like the training team at the Illinois Training Center would not be the target audience, too educated, too
They've
knowledgeable.
already proofed it. They've already given comments. They thought it was fine.
Got it, okay.
We want
I could
people whose level of reading comprehension is similar to the lower levels that we'd see in the field, just to make sure it's accessible to those people.
Um,
And we tend not to know people like that.
I feel like, so we had another class going on here where I'm at this week that I think had like 15 people in it that would have been a good audience, but the class is over now. But I think maybe a class that's being taught by the folks at the training center, depending on the class, could be an opportunity. But I have to look and see what classes are coming up. We had people who do not speak English. They're having to use translation, closed captioning on the slides for them. And so I think it would have covered it well. Let me see if there's a class in the next couple weeks that might suit.
And I mean, another thing we can do, right, is just, I'm trying to make it easy for people. But just like, if they are minimally electronically competent, we can just sit there over Zoom and say, can you answer these questions? And yeah, and I know that the electronic connection and education level tend to go together, so that's a problem. But I feel like we should just go sit at some center and like a Girl Scout cookie table and say, please take our survey, we will give you $25 and complain if there's something wrong with it. So, and it wouldn't have to be, or I wouldn't want to try to contact them in a class, right? Because then that would detract from the purpose of that engagement. But if they could be contacted, like, we are looking for people to give feedback, contact us if you're willing. I feel like it would save a lot of time compared to what we've already done and the struggles that the team has had. Or maybe we could like go park outside a football game. Like, just go to the Broncos stadium and like you'll get a range of people there, right? I'm trying to think of where we can access people who have lower levels of education. I'm not trying to look down on them. I just, sometimes we don't know how to talk across that divide.
Do you guys know how often the mobile classroom goes out to events and stuff? CSU.
No, I don't know anything about it.
I mean, they kind of target what, like 8 through 12 kids. And I'm assuming if they're at events, their parents are also at events. It can just kind of be like a passive way to the survey out. The kids are like learning about projects that are going on. The parents can just like, get it and then I don't know, see if get any response from that. Cultural events too. Dia de los Muertos is coming up. Old Town is going to have an event. I don't know about like mobile health clinics here too, but I'd assume that they'd be open to helping the survey out as well. I know just things to look into.
Okay, I'm gonna follow up with you about that, Misa, to see if we can take advantage of that. Cool. Well, any other ideas? Please bring them forward. I feel like we struggle with this.
Yeah, there's another
Yes.
cultural center that we work with in Denver, and I'm gonna talk to them as well. Because we're on a pretty good basis. With them.
There's also like I think it's monthly events with for cosplay services that end up hosting like a little like food thing in a park up in North Orleans. And it's to get them a little more comfortable with like police work and officers and stuff that could also maybe be a place. Get the survey out. I don't know, just throwing ideas at them too.
Okay, I'll check. When could we talk about that in our meeting on Monday, Misa? One issue is that your audio is a little bit fuzzed for me, so I've had a hard time hearing some of the suggestions and specificity. But I think we can talk about what we might pursue.
Yeah, and we can talk about it. Sorry, I don't know if it's my laptop or if it's the Picaro.
It could
Hearing a
be
lot. So my bad.
causing a no end of problems.
Tammy, I also have a contact down in Denver who works with the Climate Action Sustainability Resiliency Group, and they have an EJ group that's in kind of around Suncor, Commerceville, Swansea, Elyria, Globeville. I could see if we could get in contact with them. In the meetings we had with them, they seemed more educated, maybe not quite the cohort we're looking for, but it could be something interesting. And then another friend has worked with the Red Cross in Weld County that does a lot of work with some of the lower income communities out there. So I don't, either of those two could be a good way to get at some of those folks.
Great, thank you. We can follow up with both of you. I feel like this is going to be continuing need, and so we should just get better at doing it. I feel
I
kind of
just added a sheet, a Google sheet, with all the lists of names and places I've reached out to already. If anybody has any other ideas, go ahead and just feel free to add it. And if you have a personal contact, put it there too as well. But I appreciate all the places that you've said today.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good job on the survey. Getting better every time. Have a great weekend.
Everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.